Hey, what is up everybody? Welcome back to the channel, here with another color theory video this week, all about that base. I'm sorry I had to do it. I apologize sincerely. But what I wanted to talk about today was the importance of basing in the hobby and how you can utilize basing to not only make a better miniature, but to create a more unified, exciting army. So you may remember how I told you that my original army scheme for my AdMech had 3 colors in it: black, white, and orange. Well, I lied, but not a bad idea. Go check out the video up there. It tells you all you need to know to at least get started on your color scheme. Why was I lying though? Because I left out a very important color, which was the color of my base. It's blue and gold, and that really makes all of the difference. Let's look at a couple examples, look at some of the science. It's not science. We'll look at some of the reasoning why it looks better that way, and how you can take your basing and thus your army to the next level. Let's get right into it. Alright, first up here we have an example of a miniature that I painted recently. He is a kit bash conversion of an electro priest, and he is fine. He's alright. I haven't quite finished painting him yet. He still needs to be weathered and based, of course, but we're not going to worry about the weathering part yet. So let's take a look at some of the stuff that makes him look, decent. His main color scheme looks fine. 80% white, a little bit of black in there, about 10% black. And this one, a little bit of an inverse. We added a bunch of gold in here for her arms. In this particular case, because that was sort of a key component of their lore and their backstory, so wanted to highlight that properly. So it's still got about that 80-20-10 split, or so 70-20-10. That's 100%. I always paint to 110%, so that's why I get that little bit extra. But it looks good. It's got the orange accent that ties into the rest with that super bright fluorescent color to get that pop going, but something isn't quite right. Let's move on to the next example to examine why. Here is that same model next to one who has been completed and based. Now, yes, this is not a perfect example. This model also has some weathering applied to it, but let's try not to focus on that. I just haven't gotten around to weathering these other guys yet. Immediately, there is a pretty large difference, and you might not notice it at first because it's not just the streaking grime. All right, the streaking grime, it helps for sure. But it's also about the basing. What did I do with this base to make the model stand out? It's all about contrast. I said in my first color theory video, which I'm, linked to before, go watch it again if you haven't. You want high levels of contrast in your army to have them stand out and be easily identifiable and discernible on the tabletop from a great distance away. So that's why I suggested white and black as your 2 primary colors, because that kind of builds in almost the maximum amount of contrast that you can have already. But your model isn't the only part of the model. The base is still like a relatively large portion of the model. If you make the base contrast from the rest of the model, it makes the model even more identifiable, even more discernible if you have that added level of contrast. You can see in this base that I have taken a cooler blue color along, with gold in order to separate it from the warmer orange tones and the warmer grays and off-whites that I've been using for the rest of the model. Cool contrast with warm. Also, not only that, built into the base itself, there's even more contrast because gold, or orangish yellow, contrasts with blue. So you have easily identifiable parts of the base itself before you even get into the model. It's building levels upon levels of contrast that will help your model stand out on the tabletop or in a diorama, or in any other sort of situation in which you find yourself painting miniatures. Not only that, but it goes beyond just contrast. This blue and gold base is also kind of, maybe subconsciously, I don't know if I actually was thinking about this at the time I made it, but it ends up to be somewhat of a tribute to my first 40K army, the Ultramarines, sons of Bobby G himself. Put one up there for you. They're blue and gold, and my base is blue and gold. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, but also it contrasts so perfectly with this color scheme that, you know, I had to do it. Let's take a look at another example. Here are some Space Marines painted by my buddy and Crusade fellow Crusader, Xander, for his Howling Griffins. So the Howling Griffins have a yellow and red color scheme, as is, you know, pretty apparent. But look at what he's done with the base. He's gone with, again, cool tones and very dark colors. So those contrast both nicely with the warm and bright tones of his armor, as well as having a little shock of pink purple in those tufts, which is actually a fantastic foil for the yellow portions of his armor, because purple is a contrasting color with yellow. That is another great example that I saw recently that I thought would really illustrate this concept well. You have a light color scheme on your model, use a dark base. If you have a warm color scheme, and if you're not familiar with warm colors, cool colors, generally speaking, yellows, oranges, reds, purples, those are all warm colors, and blues, greens, etc. are your cooler colors. So you got a warm color model, cool color base. If you have a dark colored model, say you're painting some Sisters of Battle or some Black Templars, choose a lighter colored base, maybe a desert, maybe some green shrubbery, maybe, you know, a field. But what you want to avoid is having something like a Necron, you know, a silver robot in a urban battle zone base. You know, if it's just a base that's like concrete and rubble and stone, and then you have a silver Necron on top of it, you're just gonna kind of get a blob of gray, some of it shinier than others for sure, but it is still kind of gray on your base. Going back to this example real quick, you can see I've also weathered the edge of the cloak here with the same sort of color as the base, and that is intentional. Yes, it does mix the boundary of the base and the model a little bit, but it also ties the model into the base. They are a part of the world that they're occupying, and it really helps ground the model in reality, as opposed to this one, which has no weathering yet. So yes, I guess weathering kind of is important here. But they look like they're kind of just floating on top of it. But no, this is supposed to be a dusty surface. The planet's surface is dusty. How do I know that? I made up the planet, even the geology. Yeah. But yeah, it's, you know, you can kind of go as far as you want in terms of what the base actually means after you establish that context and that contrast. And you can even, you know, tell a story with your base. One of the concepts of my entire army is that they come from a world where gold is as common as granite, but that also informs the design of my base. I needed to have gold in the base somewhere, and I didn't want it to be like the whole thing, so it just has, there's a bunch of gold rocks all over my base, and that ties into the whole lore of the sub-faction and makes it something that is more uniquely mine. So let's take a look at our color wheel, because everything goes back to the color wheel. Like I said, my army is mostly white and black, but the accent color is orange. If we go to the complementary side here, you'll see that the opposite and contrasting color here is blue. Who'd have thought, you know? Likewise, Xander's Space Marines are red and yellow, and you can kind of split the difference here and get blue again, or we could even go to split complementary, rotate it a little bit, and hey, look at that. It's blue, just like his bases. And again, you know, he's getting the double hit of contrast with the lightly shaded and colored and brightly colored models in the very dark bases. So you can stack it as heavily and as highly as you want, but the more layers of contrast that you have, the better things are going to end up looking and the clearer the focus is going to be. Another thing about basing that you might want to consider, along with the lightness and the darkness here, is saturation. This is something that I think he could potentially do a little bit better, just because everything here is extremely saturated. I don't know if this is post-processing or not, but if you have a very highly saturated color scheme for your model, like this bright red and bright yellow, a little bit less saturation in the base will help. It's yet another level of contrast to help the model stand out from the tabletop and from the surface that they are on. That's just another thing that you could do. And if you're playing a very low saturation army, like again, Black Templars, potentially Sisters of Battle, something like that, you might want a highly saturated base in order to do the opposite. Basically, get some lava in there, something really bright. I don't know, maybe like some green goop. It's, you know, it's an alien world. You can do whatever you want. You know, say you have a very brightly colored, like, Gene Stealer Cult's army. Maybe they're in some swampland, you know, they got peat bogs or, you know, oil slicks and things of that nature. You can really flavor it however you want. Basically, infinite ideas that you can have that are both, you know, in flavor, in lore, unique, creative, and telling a story, as well as keeping these visual guidelines in mind. But there you have it, folks. This was a pretty, hopefully, easy to follow and easy to understand guide to your bases and how you can use them not only to you know, raise the visual quality of your models, but to be as or even more expressive and creative than the models that you put them on. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and you know, tell me something about the planet that you choose to base your miniatures on. Is it a war-torn city that has been ravaged by a war? Is it like mine? Is it just the home planet of the folks who are on top of it? Are they in some sort of jungle expedition searching for hidden information? You tell me. As always, the hobbying is your choice, and, you know, I'm honestly excited to hear anything that you come up with. So thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in catching more Toast Hammer, I'll be back later. Stay subscribed so you don't miss any of it. Make sure to leave a like if you found this helpful at all, and I very much hope you did. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.